No, it's my fault. It's back. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, August 15th, 2024. I will now ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, August 1st, 2024, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, August 1, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 22. Commissioner Nieto is recused from item 25. Chairperson Strand and Commissioner Hawkins have informed me there is no need to discuss the suggested minute associated with agenda item 25, directing the issuance of an order to reopen notice and request for comment, describing the Commission's intent to modify its final decision to authorize WP&L to defer the financing costs associated with the solar project cost overrun in the estimated amount of $25.4 million without carrying costs and with both conditions identified in the memorandum, and directing that if no comments are received opposing the proposed changes, that the Commission Secretary is to sign a final decision on reopening making those changes. If comments in opposition are received, the matter shall be returned to the Commission.
I move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 through 11.
Second.
All in favor?
I move we approve the notices of proceeding associated with agenda items 12 through 22.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I move in docket 6680 AF 107, we direct the issuance of an order to reopen, notice, and request for comment consistent with the Secretary's reading for item 25.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those abstaining?
Aye.
Thank you. So that brings us to agenda item 23, docket 9300 PLI 126, the proposed final decision in the investigation of the complaint of Enbridge Energy against CF Construction. And this was referred to the Commission pursuant to Wisconsin Statute Section 182.0175, sub 3, sub BR 2D. So before us is a proposed final decision from the PSC's administrative law judge in response to CF Construction's violation of the state's one-call system requirements. This complaint is a little different from those we've reviewed recently in that it's not a consent agreement between parties because CF Construction was non-responsive to the PSC's investigation and flat out refused to participate. Despite the fact that the respondent refused to participate, I think the ALJ and our investigatory team did an excellent job of laying out findings of fact and conclusions of law, and that the proposed final decision before us is a well-written and thorough document. I believe that the proposed forfeiture, surcharge, and education requirements laid out are appropriate and fair, given the respondent's callous disregard of risk, health, and safety, and perceived lack of understanding of or indifference towards the gravity of their actions. Here, the intent of the law and of the penalty is to change behavior and prevent future similar incidents. I take that charge seriously and believe we as a commission must do what we can to deter this negligent behavior from happening in the future, including the refusal to participate in the investigatory and settlement processes. Therefore, in this specific instance, I do support approving the proposed final decision as drafted, but apparently one of my colleagues wants to talk about this, so we can have that discussion now. Commissioner Nieto.
I support the final decision as drafted for the reasons that you stated.
Thank you. Commissioner Hawkins.
Yes, I'm one of the colleagues. I had just a few thoughts on this. I have a proposal to change some of the severity of 2 of the 3 violations, and the proposed recommendation by the ALJ identifies 3 violations and the aggravators and mitigators of each of those. And as noted in the memo, the maximum fine allowed per violation is $25,000. The draft decision has 3 violations deducted by $5,000 each to get to that total of $60,000. And one thing that I thought, 2 of the violations for Wisconsin Statute 182.0175 2A, it states that every person who is responsible for preparation of plans and specifications for non-emergency excavation and every excavator shall do all of the following. And there's 2 subsections there. And they did attempt, they called and they just made mistakes in how they were getting their, the digger's hotline, the markings and everything like that. So there was not just a blatant miss on trying to do the right thing. There were mistakes made in the process. So I think the severity of those two violations should be reduced. And so from the 20,000 as they stand in the ALJ's draft decision to 10,000, I think, as the chair mentioned, there was a complete disregard for the process and participation, and that is very serious. But I do know in talking to staff that we're also not trying to put businesses out of business. And the one interaction we did have with this entity was a handwritten letter, and it seems to be a smaller organization. And so I think the draft is pretty severe, and I think a lower total fine of 40,000 with a $4,000 surcharge for the hotline fund would be more appropriate, while still getting the message across that this was a very severe violation with major infrastructure underground at the site. So I just wanted to propose a reduction to the severity of two of the violations because, again, there was that attempt just done incorrectly and not carried out well. So we can save the more severe type of higher value, 20,000, 25,000 per violation for those instances where there's a zero attempt and zero effort made is sort of how I was thinking about this. So that's the one modification that I would propose, but happy to discuss with my colleagues.
So I appreciate you looking into those things and coming up with an alternative. However, and I will just state from the proposed final decision that the respondent, because they chose not to participate, that they waived any ability that they had to enter into the record that we are now basing our decision on evidence to the contrary of what we found, which again is why we have the process that we have, and their opportunity to do that is something that they did not take seriously. They refused certified mail twice. Like, that is blatant to me. And again, what you're saying may be the case, that it was slightly less egregious than how it's being presented to us, but by refusing to participate, they literally waived their right to provide any of that content or context to dispute any of the facts. So the record that we have to work with demonstrates to me 3 violations, and while there was, one mitigating factor applied to those things to bring it to 25 each for the violations, I still think that the 60,000 is appropriate for the reasons that I stated earlier. And, you know, I think there's a good discussion in here about action or actual damage versus perceived damage and dumb luck and those kinds of things. But we're lucky that nothing catastrophic happened here. And again, because we are charged with setting penalties to deter future similar behavior, I think we need to do that here so that we can hope to avoid things like this from happening in the future. So I'm going to stay at my position, which is to accept it as proposed. And again, the respondent waived their rights to contest the facts that are here. And so we have to base our decisions on the facts that are in here, and that's what I'm doing. So, Commissioner Nieto.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair Strand, and thanks, Commissioner Hawkins. I think there's, to the point of this discussion, there's a range of reasonableness here, and I think you make some good points, Commissioner Hawkins. I would stay at where I was at and support the initial draft final decision. And I think, again, it sends that strong signal without being excessive in light of the violations. I don't think where you're coming in at is unreasonable either, but that's where I'll stay.
And I can join the two of you. This is only the second one of these that I've been a part of. And in the first case, I was really focused on the potential damages, and with this major interstate pipeline, that the potential is really high. And so that was another piece of my discussion with staff, is that there should be aggravators for the potential of the scale of what could go wrong, as the chair was discussing. So I'm fine joining the two of you with the draft as issued.
Okay, thanks. We're ready for a motion on this one then.
I move we approve the draft final decision in docket 9300 PLI 126.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that brings us next to agenda item 24, which is docket 4220 TE 117, the application of Northern States Power Company for approval of customer service agreements under their voluntary renewable energy rider tariff for the Lake Hallie Solar Electricity Generating Facility. So here we have the application from NSPW for the approval of 5 customer service agreements under their voluntary renewable energy rider contract, or VR3 tariff. This tariff was authorized in the spring of 2023 at one of my first open meetings as a commissioner, and it does provide a framework for a contract, or here we're referring to that as a customer service agreement, or CSA, between the applicant and a customer for renewable generation the applicant will procure to meet the customer's renewable energy needs. All CSAs or contracts must be approved by the commission prior to the customer taking service under the VRE3 tariff, and the commission does have the authority to approve with conditions, or deny the CSAs. The commission-approved VRE3 tariff specifies that all customer contracts must contain the following terms: dedicated renewable resource details that includes a project description, equipment type, cost, size in kilowatts, projected kilowatt energy produced, coincidence with the customer's energy usage, and a timeline. Terms of agreement, a renewable resource rate, early termination provisions, and information about the customer's creditworthiness. The VRE3 tariff and customer service agreement framework are comparable to 2 other programs, Madison Gas and Electric's Renewable Energy Rider, or RER program, and Wisconsin Power and Light's Renewable Energy Partner, or REP program. Under each of these programs, all contracts are subject to commission approval, and MG&E and WP&L have had multiple contracts approved by the commission. As outlined in its filing, the dedicated energy facility under the CSAs before us today will be a 5-megawatt solar generating facility located in Lake Hallie. The solar facility does not require a certificate of authority because NSPW entered into a PPA with the developer for construction and operation of the project. There are 3 customers represented within these 5 customer service agreements, and they will pay for 100% of the costs associated with the construction of the solar project over the subscription term. The subscription level contained in each CSA was established based on the customer's historical annual energy usage, so that 100% of the energy purchased from the project is coincident with the customer's energy usage over a 12-month calendar year without oversubscribing. Under the CSAs, the customers are obligated to purchase 100% of the energy produced from the project by paying the renewable resource rate. Through payment of the renewable resource rate, which is determined based on the developer's cost to build, operate, and maintain the project, the customers will be responsible for 100% of the ongoing cost of the project incurred by the applicant under the PPA. Although a public utility is generally prohibited from entering into an individual contract to charge one customer a different rate than other customers, pursuant to Wisconsin Statute Section 196.192, the applicant can request commission approval for an individual contract for electric service. These types of individual contracts must not harm the shareholders of the applicant or other non-participating customers. And here, the applicant did design the CSAs under the VRE3 tariff with the intent that they are revenue neutral to all other customers, and that the participating customers' payments will cover 100% of the project costs and interconnection costs. The CSAs here also clearly outline early termination procedures and demonstrate the creditworthiness of the customers entering into these agreements. I appreciate the quality of the information included in NSP's filings, as well as their comments to the commission memo. I also found their supplemental comments in response to Vote Solar's comments helpful. Although the comments were filed slightly late, I support accepting those into the record here. I also appreciate the thorough analysis that our commission staff undertook. As outlined in the memo, they reviewed and analyzed the various CSA provisions to ensure that they fulfilled the requirements in the VRE3 tariff and recommended that the commission could find them reasonable. So to recap, the commission did authorize the overarching VRE3 tariff in the spring of 2023 in anticipation for projects just like these. And in requiring approval of individual contracts under the VRE3 tariff, The commission did retain its authority over a future review, which is exactly what is before us today. So the process that was outlined and approved last year is working. The applicant followed this, developed and filed the CSAs in accordance with the tariff's requirements, and are ensuring that things are happening in the appropriate order. This specific project also, to me, represents the kind of cooperation and mutually beneficial arrangement that's carefully crafted to balance the interests and protect other customers within the existing legal framework we have in Wisconsin. And I was especially compelled by the revenue-neutral program design to ensure that non-participating customers and shareholders are not harmed by this arrangement. Therefore, I do find that this application and the associated customer service agreements have been filed in accordance with the approved tariff, and I do support the approval of these agreements, which would put me at alternative 1, approve NSPW's customer service agreements as filed. One other note is that as part of its application, NSPW did request the commission to consider allowing delegated approval authority for certain situations where the service agreements associated with this project undergo minor modifications, that those do not warrant a new proceeding. So given that limited scope of this delegation request, in the interest of keeping minor program elements moving expeditiously through our process, and given the fact that the DARA Division Administrator here has already been granted broader delegation authority over the MG&E Renewable Energy Rider Program, I am comfortable delegating authority to the DARA Division Administrator to approve minor modifications to agreements consistent with the items outlined in NSPW's application. So, Commissioner Nieto, I'll turn it over to you now. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Strand. For similar reasons to the ones you expressed, I was at Alt 1, approve as filed. I did support the delegation using the language suggested by the applicant here. I don't know if we have to affirmatively accept the reply comments. If pressed and we need to affirmatively accept, I would accept those reply comments as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Hawkins?
Thank you. Yeah, I would also accept the late filed comments. They were helpful in my understanding of what's going on here, because I was not at that prior decision, so I was learning this all from a standstill. And I was fine with approval of the applicant CSAs. I did have one concern with one of the 4 conditions that were proposed by the applicant, and that was condition 3. So I was at Alt 2, which was approve the CSAs. But the third piece that would be delegated to the DARA administrator was assignment of contracts or a portion of a contract to a new customer with equivalent credit. And so I thought the other 3 were perfectly sensible and made a lot of sense, change in subscription levels amongst the people that have already been approved to participate. But that third one was basically allowing anybody else to join in. And so I just don't know. I'd love to hear my colleagues' thoughts about, if this could start with just a single customer, and then there could just be this sort of like side process where other customers join in. And again, I don't really know the history of what was intended to be the level of scrutiny that the commission applies for these applications for the CSAs. So I was originally thinking that we should strike that third component of the 4 items that are delegated to the DARA administrator. I'm fine with the other 3, 1, 2, and 4 as proposed by the applicant. So that's why I was at Alt 2. Would be interested to hear your thoughts.
Thank you. So in my opinion, one of the beauty and comfort increasing aspects of delegating things to division administrators is that if there is anything that they are uncertain about or that they feel needs to actually be reviewed by the full commission, they can kick that up to us at any time. So while the delegation authority exists or would exist on these 4 things, it's their discretion, but they always have the opportunity to ask us to weigh in if there's anything that they're uncomfortable with. I appreciate your comments on the assignment of contracts. I think if it started to look like this was rapidly expanding that or adding people that, or entities that, seemed like an overreach of the initial intent of these CSAs, I have no doubt that we would be appropriately informed and have the ability to say something about that. I also think that, especially in relation to the MG&E RER program, which I mentioned, that the authority here is still narrow, the delegation authority, and even more narrow than the delegation authority that our division administrator has for the existing MG&E program. So that also gave me comfort that instead of asking for approval of these CSAs and then saying, oh, by the way, like, let's just delegate some of the, like, major items to the administrator, I think the applicant was really thoughtful in limiting the focus of what that delegated authority would be. So that's why I was comfortable with it, but Commissioner Nieto, please feel free to weigh in as well.
Similarly, I think it's a good call out and a good question from Commissioner Hawkins. And I feel generally overall comfortable with the delegation as is for those same reasons, and also comfortable that the division administrator would raise anything to us that appears unusual or particularly different or contentious. So I'd stick with that as written for the delegation. Thank you.
And just like the last item, I appreciate hearing from my colleagues, and I'm fine joining you there at alternative one, and thank you for the additional context and information on the process.
Okay, thank you. I think we're ready for a motion on this one as well.
Thank you. In docket 4220 TE 117, I move we approve the applicant's customer service agreements as filed and delegate approval authority to the DARE administrator consistent with the request in the company's application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do you need anything about comments, or are you good?
I would do it consistent with your discussion.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes our official business for today. Our next open meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 22nd, 2024 at 10:30 a.m. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we stand adjourned until Thursday, August 22, 2024 at 10:30 a.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.